I need to move. But my church, friends, or family can help. Almost everyone has said this at one point or another. Now, as a moving company, we know we're not right for everyone. We're not a perfect fit. Some people prefer to move themselves. And whether they use friends, family, or church group though, this is still a big decision. All right, so the bottom line is that moving is difficult no matter how you do it. That's obvious. It's a major life change. So it follows that it will be expensive, time-consuming, and stressful. But should you DIY move or should you hire it out? Here are a few things to consider to help you decide. Number 1, do you have time? Between packing, loading, driving, unloading, coordinating help, and doing it all between your everyday life, it takes most people about 3 to 4 weeks to complete a DIY move. And it can feel like a second full-time job for most people because it requires extensive time and attention. Now, this isn't a bad thing, it just depends on whether or not you have the time to do it. Now, to start, one of the most complex parts that may surprise you is that it's really hard to pack in place. And that means when you pack a little at a time, you'll find that you have a lot of things that you still need, so you can't pack them until you're ready to leave your home. Things like dishes, underwear, bed sheets, these are typical candidates for this kind of problem. With all of these essential items needing a later date for packing, it creates this problem. What can I pack now? That's why moving companies send packers a day or two before, to load, to minimize your time without essential items. See, a team of packers will arrive to pack everything quickly, but by contrast, if you pack yourself, you won't be able to do that. You'll need to pack a little at a time while you have time. So that means you'll need to live without crucial things a little longer. So, is it right for me? Well, if you have the time and ability to execute your move over 3 to 4 weeks without putting a crunch on everything else in your life, DIY might be the right path for you. Number 2, how much do you have to move? Now, DIY is possible at any scale, but the more you have, the harder it becomes. Remember that you must count more than just furniture. Boxes, which you probably haven't packed yet, also need to be factored into the count. Now, a mover is going to create an inventory. They'll go room by room and create a detailed list to know exactly what and how much they will move. It would be best if you did the same thing, to get a complete list of how much you're going to move, because realistically knowing how much you have is going to help you decide whether you can handle the size of the move with DIY. So is it right for me? If you have 1 or 2 pickup trucks worth of belongings, well, DIY is probably a really great option. However, if you have more than that, your move is going to become more complex. To accomplish a large move on your own, you're going to need more help, make more time, and conduct more planning. So you have to decide if that's something that you want to do. Number 3, can you lift heavy items, or do you want to? Now, there are factors to consider, too, on this point. First, how many heavy things do you own? Next, are you able to lift them? And if not, who will? Now, there's an age-old meme that's traveled around the internet that spells this out perfectly. If you're over 35, hire movers. Your friends are too old. Nobody wants to slip a disc for pizza and 2 Bud Lights. Now, that's funny to read, but it's worth considering. Who will lift the heavy belongings? Additionally, can you and your chosen moving help realistically handle the scope and size of your move? Now, again, if you have 1 or 2 pickup trucks worth of stuff to move, that's not a big deal. Not like getting a whole moving van, because getting someone to help you move a few heavy items is, after all, a very different conversation than, hey, can I have your entire day to help me move? So is it right for me? Well, if you have a group of people that you trust who can lift heavy items and do it for several hours, remember, you need to load and unload. Well, then DIY might be right for you, and hopefully no one will slip a disc. Number 4, are you worried about damage? Now, moving is likely to cause some damage to your belongings or home. It's a lot of movement. But the more experience that people packing and loading have, the less damage is likely. When you DIY, that experience with moving is often limited. More damage is likely to happen to both your home and your belongings. And damage happens in a few ways. Inside the box, it's all about how you pack. Friction is the enemy. It's typically what causes damage to items inside a box, when they rub together without padding between them. In the truck, it's very similar. Look at some pictures that we have. One of these is a DIY move, and the other is a professional move. So, is it right for me? Now is an excellent time to be honest with yourself. If you aren't concerned about increased risk or damage to your home or belongings, well then DIY might be right for you. If you are concerned about damage to your home or belongings, then consider ways to get more experienced help. Number 5, how do I judge cost versus benefit? All right, the last point to consider is your motive behind making your decision, and it always comes down to money. DIY is sometimes cheaper than using a moving company, though it might surprise you to know that isn't always the case. When you factor in your time, the cost of any rental truck, help, packing materials, and all the other things that factor into DIY, it's something that you should consider because it creates costs in other ways like time, stress, damage, and extra work. Compare that to a moving company, which charges you more money but saves you on those other costs. So you're gonna pay the cost of the move either way, either on your own or using a mover, but what you pay with depends on you. And that's a point to consider strongly. Are you trying to save every penny? Are you willing to save some time, stress, and disruption in your life by paying a professional? Ultimately, you gotta decide what's going to suit you, your circumstance, and your move. Though we might recommend that you shop for both options. Compare the other costs, the time, the energy, the stress, the damage, all of that comes with a DIY move to decide the right way to move forward. Yeah, that's right, that's a moving pun. So, is it right for me? Typically, DIY is better for smaller moves, shorter distance moves, moves where you have younger and willing help, and moves where damage to your home and belongings doesn't worry you. The further away you are from that list, the more likely you'll want a professional to help you out.